Let's jump right into this explainer because we are watching an absolutely dramatic geopolitical shift happening right now. It's like watching a 150-year-old territorial dynamic quietly run in reverse. Seriously, it has the sweeping scale of a historical documentary, and it's playing out right in front of us.
So how exactly does a country lose its frontier without a single shot fired? We're looking at a truly fascinating situation. Russia isn't losing its vast eastern frontier to a massive invading army. No, it's surrendering control to an economic and demographic vacuum entirely of its own making.
And the historical irony here? It's profound. Think back to 1860. You had a collapsing Qing dynasty, fighting multiple wars and rebellions, and they basically signed away a piece of land larger than France and Germany combined, simply because they had no army left to defend it. Fast forward a century and a half to today, and Russia's bleeding economic control of that exact same territory right back to China. The math is literally running in reverse.
Section 1. The emptying frontier. Let's look at this demographic collapse.
Picture the sheer scale of this landmass for a second. The far eastern federal district makes up nearly a third of Russia's entire territory. Yet, it has lost roughly 20%, one-fifth of its population since the collapse of the Soviet Union. This massive resource-rich territory, a place stretching across countless time zones, is now home to fewer than 8 million people. To put that into perspective, that is an area larger than Western Europe, populated by fewer people than live in New York City.
But what's even more alarming is the sentiment of the people who are actually still there. Recent surveys reveal a staggering statistic. Up to 2/3 of the ethnic Russian population living in this region actively want to leave. So the land isn't just emptying, the people who are left are already looking for the exit.
Which brings us to Section 2, the economic vacuum and how war acts as an accelerant.
Russia's national demographic crisis has escalated sharply since 2022. We're talking hundreds of thousands of people emigrating, leaving millions of jobs completely unfilled. And crucially, the one thing that used to mask Russia's population decline, traditional immigration, has dried up entirely. The eastern frontier? Well, it's feeling this pain the hardest.
The physical contrast right across the border river is just stark. On the Russian side, you have quiet, half-empty streets at night, but look across to the other side and you see bright Chinese border cities booming with development. Into Russia's vacuum steps Beijing. Not with tanks, mind you, they're stepping in with strategic investments.
Russia explicitly rolled out a 10-year zero corporate tax regime this January for the Far East and Arctic, and they deliberately marketed it to Chinese investors. The results are wild. Chinese agribusiness now leases hundreds of thousands of hectares of Far Eastern farmland, and cross-border trade with just one Chinese province hit $32 billion last year. A deep, deep economic dependency is forming.
Let's move to Section 3, one-way bridges, and see how they're exporting these resources. The movement of physical goods tells a pretty sobering story of its own. As new infrastructure opens up, heavy volumes of raw Russian resources like timber, grain, and ore are just flooding eastward. Meanwhile, finished manufactured goods barely trickle back west. It's a very one-sided relationship. And the sheer volume is staggering, 21 million. A single, newly opened rail bridge alone can move 21 million tons of cargo annually, directly into China. On top of that, China is now using the Russian port of Vladivostok to transit its own domestic cargo. This effectively restores Chinese sea access near the Sea of Japan for the first time in over 150 years. Now, to be perfectly clear, this is strictly a commercial arrangement, not a change of sovereignty. But, it fundamentally alters the economic gravity of the entire region.
Moving on to Section 4, foreign labor influx. Who's staffing the frontier?
The workforce here is undergoing a radical shift. To fill the void, tens of thousands of North Korean laborers are now working across the Far East. In fact, some regions are actively cutting their Chinese labor quotas specifically so they can import more North Korean workers instead. So, what once defined Russian identity as their rugged eastern frontier is now being staffed by two entirely foreign workforces simultaneously. Culturally, this demographic shift has sparked some fierce nationalist rhetoric online in China. Social media voices are openly demanding the return of these historical territories. And adding fuel to this fire, official Chinese government maps now actually list Vladivostok alongside its old Chinese name. But objectively speaking, we need to note that Beijing officially settled this entire border back in 2004. The Chinese government has made absolutely no official territorial claims since. So while the online grievance from the public is very real, the official state policy of the government is not pushing a territorial claim.
All right, Section 5, the Arctic dependency. A northern freeze is setting in.
Now, Russian strategic documents themselves openly admit that population decline isn't just some regional southern issue. They explicitly name it as one of the top security threats to their entire Arctic zone. Demographically speaking, the freeze is definitely setting in.
And the military impact? It's captured by this terrifying figure for Russian planners: 80%. The Northern Fleet's ground forces in the Arctic have lost roughly 80% of their strength simply because those troops had to be redeployed to the war in Ukraine. That northern shield has been totally hollowed out.
Economically, it's just as stark up north. Russia's flagship Arctic gas project now survives only via a growing fleet of sanctioned LNG tankers. And where are they going? Practically all of them are bound for Beijing. With their last European customers slated to disappear entirely starting next year, Russia's northern showcase is going to be completely dependent on a single buyer.
Think about this. Russia took this frontier by force over a century ago when China was weak. But today, it is slowly losing economic control of it by default. Why? Because Russia is now the one running short. They're short of people to populate it, short of money to develop it, and entirely short of any alternative buyer willing to pay full price for its resources.
Which leaves us with a critical, lingering question. Can a nation maintain true sovereignty over a frontier when it has no people left to populate it and relies entirely on its neighbor to fund it? It's a dramatic reshaping of the global map, happening quietly without a single shot fired. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and definitely keep this question in mind as we watch this 21st century reality unfold.